Welcome back, Rankers. Google brought out a really interesting animation this week about how search works. Now, to find it, you simply go to google.com, inside search, how search works, the story, and you'll find this great little animation. And it takes you through a bunch of different steps of how Google crawls the internet. They reckon there's over 1 trillion pages now on the web, and how it finds things. But the main thing I find really interesting about this whole, story of how search works is that if you go to the Fighting Spam link, it's fascinating because we often get questions from people about, is this going to hurt my site? Yeah, will Google punish me because of this? Will Google punish me because of that? Well, for most of the sites out there that we see, you're not actually being punished. It's just that Google is looking at your site and going, you know what, confusing, not relevant, maybe broken. Not sure, therefore I'm not going to send my users to it. When Google talks about penalties, they're talking about sites that are blatantly breaching their terms of service or their search guidelines, their quality guidelines, like we showed you with Interflora last week, and that's Interflora UK. But on this page, on the Fighting Spam, what they're showing you here is examples of pages that are actually being removed from the index on the fly because they've been found to be incredibly spammy. And here they're saying things like, such as using automatically generated gibberish, cloaking, which is a process where you will send the Googlebot to one site, which is full of keywords and all that sort of stuff, and then you'll send the user to a lovely pictorial site, which isn't what Google wants. Google wants to see the same thing, essentially, as what your users are seeing. Make sense? But this shows you the sorts of sites, or the sorts of pages, I should say, that are being taken out of the Google index. And you can see here that, and you'll get a little warning here saying when you're looking at these things, some of them might be offensive, but just gibberish. Hollister Canada online official outlet. Or maybe Hollister's a brand, but some of these, they're just horrible, horrible pages. And there was one that I took out. I mean, here's a classic example of gibberish. UGG sale in fact accomplish an aberration. And a page without content, that must be just using some spammy techniques. But one that was taken out earlier, it was an Australian site, paydayloansyouKnow.com.au. Now, this is a very competitive space. Huge amounts of companies trying to vie to get ranked for payday loans. So payday loans, already they've gone and registered a domain name, which has got the keyword in it. Not as valuable since the exact match domain update in October of last year. And you look at this site, you think, geez, a really nice site, looks really nice, until you scroll down a bit and you get to all this text underneath the fold. And if you just read one sentence, you'll know why Google has taken this page out of the index. You may have been languishing in the high interest rate personal loan outstanding unpaid invoices and outstanding. They also can be a game for both it this way. Repayment, it's really hard to read. Okay, so that's been booted. And look, this is a .com.au, but we're talking about pound sterling. Later on, we're talking about gas instead of petrol. And basically, the reason for all this text down here is to get a lot of the keywords, such as payday loans, on that first page so that Google will think it's relevant for that phrase. Now, when you go and have a look to see how many pages has it got left in the index, none. So the whole site's been taken out, not just the one page, presumably because they were similar pages. Now, when we go and have a look and find out, well, what company would own this, we don't find out a lot of information. We've looked up, I've done a whois lookup, and we can see it was registered by this particular company, and this particular company seems to be a registrar for other companies. So it can't actually find out who's necessarily behind or who the beneficiary is for people who apply via that company. And you can see there's a company that's they do registrations of companies. So presumably they simply own the domain name and not the paydayloansyouKnow.com.au itself. So what I always tell people is, look, don't fear the worst. Unless you know you've been doing something really dodgy, right? Unless you know you've gone out to break Google's terms of service. Quite often, a significant drop in the Google rankings is because something's happened to your site. So go back and trace your steps. Have you changed hosting companies recently? Have you updated your site recently? For large e-commerce sites, this can mean putting up a whole new catalog of products, and that could have caused something that Google didn't like or thought was confusing, and so it didn't come back to the site. Have you done things like redesign the site without looking at the redesign SEO techniques that we talked about a few weeks ago? So if you have a drop in the rankings, go back and trace your steps. And remember to go and have a look at Webmaster Tools, especially Webmaster Tools, and have a look at the crawling activity as well with the bot, because that will tell you if Google has come in and had a problem, and you can easily see sometimes on the crawl stats. We'll just go to Webmaster Tools and show you what I mean. So you go into Webmaster Tools and you go into the crawl stats section, which of course is under health. And if you've had a recent drop and you see, say, maybe time spent downloading a page has spiked, or you'll see some spikes like this, kilobytes downloaded a day, that could be a bit of a telltale sign. Quite often we'll see this one here spike, or one of these up here drop, and then that can lead you to other things like Google can't access the site, or the sitemap has disappeared and Google's not crawling it anymore. But just remember, if you're doing any of these sorts of techniques, then you will eventually disappear from Google, because this is purely for the search engines, it's not for the user, and that's not what Google wants. But go and have a look at this. I find it fascinating, but then I'm a geek. See, here's another one, another payday loan. Heaps, don't even spell loan properly. But there's heaps of, and you have a look at the URLs. They're all horrible URLs. They're just typically auto-generated rubbish, basically. So don't be scared. If you're a legitimate business out there with a legitimate website, then you really don't have a lot to worry about. You really just need to get your house in order. You're not going to be penalised. Even things when people talk about duplicate content penalties, there's not a penalty. It's just Google looking at something and saying, I don't know which piece of content to rank. That's why it's so important to get your authorship set up so Google can attribute genuine, unique content to you as well. And that is it for today's show. If you have any questions, then please send them in and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye.